Hi everybody!
Persona 4 Revival is one of my most anticipated games coming out. We might even see it next year given how Atlus structures their fiscal years, but that's a topic for another video. There's one thing Atlus absolutely cannot do to P4R, otherwise the fandom will riot, and rightfully so. Let's see if we can seek the truth together on this one. So what is the one thing Atlus absolutely must avoid at all costs? It's paywalling the Persona 4 Golden content in any way whatsoever. I previously made a video discussing if I thought Atlus would cut the Golden content in a Persona 4 remake. This was before we knew it would be called Revival, so some of the terminology is outdated, but the meat of the video still holds true. So if you want to hear my thoughts on the matter, watch that video when you're finished with this one. The main reason Atlus 100% can't add the content from Golden as DLC comes down to how the story of Golden is structured. Atlus literally cannot incorporate it as DLC unless they force players to do a New Game Plus, given you have to max out the social link with Marie to access the extra content. However, given gamers are still very concerned about the possibility of Atlus doing something shady in the name of profit, that is their game plan after all, since they never intended on giving us the answer for Persona 3 Reload. They only did so after fans complained about it not being included. But they didn't give it out as free DLC. No, they released it as a season pass, giving out costumes and musical extras in the lead up to episode Aigis' release. The extras weren't even things people cared about. Most people bought the season pass just to have access to the answer. Now, Atlus was able to do this thanks to the nature of the narrative. The answer comes after the ending of the base game, making it easier to incorporate. With the final dungeon found in Persona 4 Golden and all the extra content, that's simply not an option, given Golden's narrative is woven into that of the base game. Now that we have some background, let's break down why this would be a bad thing. So one of the main reasons I can think of as to why this would be a bad thing comes down to how it would significantly harm the Atlus brand were they to do this. There was already some pushback to Persona 3 Reload's Season Pass, even though people bought it in droves. How do we know people bought it? Because of the recent Sega investor reports. Now that Atlus knows they can do a Season Pass successfully, this 100% is going to mean they'll do more of them, even though a lot of people will be pissed about it. But how will this harm the brand? Look at how people are getting more and more burnt out from Season Passes for all of the games they play. Something has to give eventually. So, unless Atlus wants to shoot themselves in the foot, this is a bad idea all around. We also know from various interviews given over the last couple of years that Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance will be the final definitive edition, as we've come to know them. So that means no more games like Persona 3 FES, 4 Golden, or 5 Royal. So that leaves out a definitive version of Persona 4 Revival down the line. These definitive editions were also starting to piss people off, since they knew a new version would come out a couple of years after the launch of the base game, effectively slowing down the potential sales of those titles, as people would rather wait it out for the definitive experience. Personally, I didn't mind the definitive edition business plan, given the games would often experiment with brand new features that almost felt like playing a new game, despite the story content remaining unchanged for the most part. Even though Atlus did manage to interweave both the Golden and Royal content fairly organically when those versions released. But they can do better on that front. If you want to see me make a video about how Atlus can improve the integration of Persona 4 Golden content into Revival, then let me know in the comments. If enough people are interested, I'll prioritize it, even though I'm currently going through an avalanche of content. Another reason Atlus needs to avoid the Season Pass model comes down to it not making much sense for Persona 4 Revival. I've covered some of why that is earlier in this video. However, it just doesn't make that much sense for them to carve up the game like that. Unless, of course, P4R ends up being a reimagining in the vein of the Final Fantasy VII remakes, which for sure would piss a lot of people off. given how beloved Persona 4 is amongst the fans. For a lot of people, it was where they started the Persona franchise, meaning they hold the game very dear to their hearts. When something like that gets mucked with, fans are going to be very vocal with any displeasures they may have. For the average gamer, that'll be less of a problem, albeit seeing some of the negative chatter from the core fanbase may be enough to dissuade them from playing the game. Though I would say it's a given Persona 4 Revival cannot fail. It's one of the most beloved entries getting a modernized update, and it'll be a good way to onboard newcomers. Not much else to say really. Now check out some more of my Persona 4 Revival content, and until next time, keep blazing that trail.